Welcome to Sounding Board, the podcast about freedom and capitalism. Well, good evening, Andy.
Good evening.
I suppose we're going to have to talk about the topic of the moment, coronavirus.
I'd forgotten all about that.
Well, for our listeners, certainly that's why you're wearing a ridiculous mask. You are going to struggle to drink that.
Yeah, okay.
Do you think I'm going to infect you? Are you going to infect me? Have you come around breaching a curfew? And
I'll take off my Spider-Man mask. Well, I'm getting on a bit now. I'm in my 40s. Worried about you millennials. So
right. Look, if we're going to have, I don't want to have the argument over when the millennial generation started, but it was 1981. All right. So Covid-19.
Covid-19.
You see, even just saying it, I can't not think about.
Come on, Eileen.
Oh, no, see, that wasn't what I was thinking about. It was Monsters Inc. and 2319.
We've got a 2319.
2319. Covid-19.
Sock on the back of the.
Yeah. No, come on, Eileen. No, that's definitely going to get in my head.
It's going to it's an earworm. It's going to be there forever.
Covid-19. Yeah. No, I can see that. It's the only game in town.
Before we get into it, doesn't it make you appreciate Brexit?
Right. Okay.
Those innocent times.
Right. So I suppose let's unpick it. What do you mean? Do you mean?
Well, so I was bored senseless of Brexit and everyone going on about Brexit all the time, but that is nothing compared to everyone going on about the coronavirus.
So every platform, every media outlet, every person,
everyone
can't walk down the street without overhearing a conversation about this. This is all it is. I mean, there are.
So we're just adding to it.
Sorry,
we're just adding to it this evening.
Well, and this is my problem with it, and I want to do something a bit different. You and I have been talking about this a lot all week. Obviously, like every other conversation, we have been trying to find various angles and things, and there are certain angles that people on social media are taking. There are certain trends. You can see certain trends forming in certain directions, can't you? Which I think we should talk about and we should acknowledge.
I mean, there's been some utter ridiculous stuff. So I mean, most of the conversations that you have with your friends and with your family and with your work colleagues,
they're practical things.
Yeah, is everybody okay? Can I help? Is anyone self-isolating? Do you need anything?
Yeah. How
are you coping with everything? All that kind of stuff. And then there are the people that moan that Donald Trump used the term Chinese flu.
Yeah.
Or Chinese virus or whatever he says. Do German measles next, or Spanish flu, or even Ebola. That's based on the location. It's just.
Is it? I didn't realise that.
Yeah, but it's just so ridiculous that the cries of racism.
I just don't have any time for that at all. I think it is interesting. Thinking just going back to the point you made about Brexit. I mean, I really do hope. I don't think they've got the same sense that we do, but I hope the Remainists are thinking, okay, maybe it wasn't as bad as all that. The point is, this is a lot worse.
On that note, remember I don't want to regurgitate Project Fear, but remember all the things that people were telling us would happen, that planes would fall out of the sky, there'd be no medication, there'd be empty shelves, all this kind of thing. So obviously that was fine as soon as we left the EU. We've now got the coronavirus, and this is probably the worst global event for quite some time, and that's hit us, and we're still fine. So I'm hoping when we come through the end of it, whenever this is, and it could be quite a long time. So we're seeing evidence now where countries who had these huge spikes are now seeing dramatic kind of drop-offs. We haven't had the big spike. We're also trying to flatten the curve. So it could last a period of months, but after all that, I'm hoping they'll say, okay, maybe it wasn't as bad as that. I mean, what else can they throw at us other than perhaps Godzilla? If we can cope with Brexit, we can cope with this.
So I think that I want to talk about that kind of wartime spirit that is being engendered at the moment, and I have a lot of sympathy for it.
Well, particularly for those people who have been around during the war, or perhaps grew up, during.
But the
during
kinds
the
of restrictions that are being placed on people, and let's face it, we're all about freedom and liberty, okay? And at the moment, things aren't compulsory, but even the language changed today from Boris. He used the term "must" today when saying people must do these things, and that's just in 24 hours.
And that's a short step away from people will, isn't it?
Have to, yeah. And so I get that. I get that it's not just all happening overnight. That it's being ramped up. I think that was always the plan. Well, it's nonsense of it being a U-turn in policy. I think it's utter nonsense.
Well, no, because
they said early on this is going to change.
Of course, and they said, look, we'll assess it at regular intervals, and it might be that we do this in the future. They've now done this in the future.
Yeah,
it's hardly a U-turn.
No, completely. But the idea that this is the largest thing the government has done in a generation, in multiple generations, since the war. But you compare it. You say global events, and there are fewer things that could be defined, I think, as a global event. This is one of them. World wars, definitely. But even then, I disagree.
You could live in Switzerland. And it wouldn't affect you as much. It doesn't affect the whole of the world.
And this is the point. But also the wars that we're talking about, World War I, World War II, they didn't just happen overnight. There was a build-up, and then there were escalations, and then there were conflicts, and there were ebbs and there were flows, and all this kind of stuff. And they lasted years as well. Now, I'm not to say there aren't going to be knock-on effects from what's happening at the moment, certainly economic ones, but we are talking about demand that isn't necessarily going away. I mean, I suppose it's a difficult thing if people are going to get laid off and things like that, and that's going to obviously affect the economy. But factories shut down, they stop making iPhones. People are still going to want iPhones afterwards. They're going to stop the factory back up again.
Yeah,
it's a pause.
It's delayed demand.
It's not the same as the financial crisis. No, and the financial crisis of 2008 wasn't the global event that this was. This is spreading like wildfire, and it is something that affects everyone almost identically country to country as well. I know there are differences, and some of that's geography, some of that is infrastructure, and access to healthcare and age and temperature. But in general, it affects humans the same no matter where you are. But it is striking, I think, that the Borises and the Sunaks, Commander Sunak is standing up, talking about this being, we'll do whatever it takes. This is like war. I mean, I remember going back to when we had first voted to leave the EU, and people like David Davis, who was then made Brexit secretary, were trotted out on the Today programme, and being challenged on, can the civil service do this? Can we actually do this project? And he's like, well, we managed to do 2 world wars. I think we can do this. And at the time, there were all of these projections and accusations of it being this humongous job that was going to cost the earth and all this kind of stuff. And obviously it didn't, even though for 3 years it's been dragged out. This just dwarfs all of it.
Well, what is it? Didn't he announce 330 billion
overnight? That's it. Bang.
So far, if it needs more, then then we'll do whatever it takes.
Blank check. Blank check.
I mean, what if it goes up to $1 trillion? It's an incredible amount.
And so we'll stick with the war analogy for a bit. And a conversation I had with my wife was, and obviously she knows that I'm all about not state control. But so we debate this stuff. She's much more centrist, but she gets it. And I came up with the view. I said, well, look, I'd rather the government spent to do this than spent to fight a war. I get the war mentality, but we're fighting a virus, not trying to kill other human beings. So if I can get on board with anything, it's get on board with the action necessary.
Yeah, so moral relativism, killing a virus is better than killing a human being, for sure.
Yes, exactly. But I suppose now what we need to do is start unpicking the state interventions, and I think it's worth talking about the state interventions globally, not just the UK stuff, and what we think they'll achieve, and what negative effects we think they'll have. The Fed dropping interest rates. The Bank of England did the same thing. Stock markets tumbling. Now is the time to buy stocks. This is that once in a generation opportunity where the likes of Apple have lost 25% of their share value. I'm no expert, but I don't think that was a specific bubble that burst. I think within a year, 2 years, or maybe even 6 months, those share prices are back, because it's not going to be as bad as everyone thinks, because demand's going to pick up again, jobs are going to be resumed. It's going to take some time. I'm not saying it's happening, it's going to happen overnight, but within a reasonable amount of time, it's going to carry on.
Yes, certainly companies like Microsoft, like Apple. I probably wouldn't buy Laura Ashley shares today.
No,
but there certainly are going to be some bargains.
Do you think so? I get the feeling that what government wants to do is press the pause button on the economy. And obviously levelling up now, out the window. And I want to point out that I picked up on that level out phrase ages ago from Boris, before he was even running, I think, or maybe when he ran to become leader. And I remember having the conversation with you. We did it on a podcast and said about the gaming analogies and all this kind of stuff. Leveling up is now a thing, isn't it? It's now that's the phrase of, well, it was the phrase of the moment. I think that's been kind of put on the back burner. But I get the impression that they will spend and do anything in order for people to basically put the finger in their ears and get through this period of time and just pick up their job where they left off. Everyone's going to just buy all the same things, sell all the same things. Let's just pretend it didn't happen. Is that kind of impression you get from these announcements? I mean, they're still coming. We haven't had everything yet.
Yeah, I mean, it'll never happen. It's
no, I know, but
you can't. It's crazy to even think about that. I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I don't disagree at all. But I mean,
that's the desire.
Of course it is. Yeah,
but I think they know it's not possible. But I think that's what they're trying.
But the amount, the amount of money that they're pledging. I mean, where is that going to come from?
Yeah. Well,
your kids.
My kids. Yeah, totally. No, this is it. And I mean, you see the criticism straight away in the media, and you see, oh well, this is they're talking about loans for companies. Well, what company might want to pay? Might not be able to pay that back. Well, then the company folds. Then I mean, it's up to you. If access to capital for liquidity is what you need, then you were going to do that anyway with a different circumstance, an event that only affected you. So I think that's a slightly odd argument. I think most businesses would be quite happy to borrow at very, very low rates in order for them to survive, if it meant only for a very short amount of time. But it's somehow like the money has to be given for free, but yet the money has to come from somewhere, and it is that classic magic money tree argument now, isn't it? Where
these are the times. This is why we have a printing press, Nick. This is why we print money and just give it to the banks.
Yeah,
it's if you talk to the socialists, that's exactly that's exactly what.
So we should just devalue. I'm not asking you. I'm saying.
I mean, they would never admit that it would be devalued as a currency, but they would certainly advocate for the physical act of increasing the money supply.
So there's two sides to this. I think we need more state, and this is the only possible way that this works. Everyone's a statist during a pandemic, or whatever the kind of meme that's kind of coming.
Well, yeah, the meme is there are no libertarians in a pandemic.
There we go. But I want to come back to that. I want to come back to that. and this is it is state intervention. It is state saying you must stay inside, curbing movement, closing schools, yada yada yada. But
I want to come back to that as well in a minute.
Okay, that's fine. But the other side of it is we're going to cut tax temporarily. Well, no business rates for a year. We're going to basically ignore the regulations surrounding restaurants becoming takeaways, etc., etc., etc. Because these are burdens for businesses, and we need to get them out of the way so the businesses can survive. Hang on a minute.
I know.
Is that not everyone's a libertarian during a pandemic?
That's a good point. So, but things like so IR35,
yes,
which has been the bane of my life for months now.
Yeah.
So for those of you,
it's been on your shoulders since it was a thing. I mean, you've been contracting for years.
Well, yes. So I formed my company and went contracting. Got my first contract in 2002.
Yeah.
So it's a long time, and IR35 wasn't brand new then. So it's been a pain. It's all about disguised employment, and they basically try and get more tax out of you. They want you to pay,
even though you don't get any of the benefits of being employed.
No, I'll have a week's notice period.
And no holiday pay,
no sick pay, but they'll expect me to pay, even though it's basically just me, they'll expect me to pay employers and employees national insurance. That's what so that's the one saving is you don't pay national insurance twice.
Yeah.
The other saving is that I could claim my travel back off the top line. So and the train.
So business expense.
Yeah. So and train tickets for me, a train ticket to London from here is about £1,300 a month.
Yeah.
And so that will come off my top line. So that's worth it. It's a lot of tax.
Yeah.
Which and then, again, I would argue any day of the week. Why can't everybody claim the travel to and from work?
Yeah.
Why do they get taxed to go to work? It's just such a perverse incentive. But anyway,
that's all tax. So
they've been changing the rules on IR35 so that basically everybody, unless you've got a real kind of business to business relationship with the company that you work for, like a proper statement of work, which is very, very difficult for someone like me who does different things. So I work in software development, and I will work on a project, but you don't know what the end of the project's going to look like, because you'll do 2 weeks of work, you'll ship it out, you'll get feedback on that work, and the rest of the project will be based depending on...
It's deliberately dynamic.
Of course it is. So if you're working in like software developers often work in this kind of dynamic nature, and you're not going to get your employer to give you a statement of work every 2 weeks in a new contract. So it's never,
here's a PO. Yeah.
So it's never going to happen. So basically, everybody goes inside IR35. They're then taxed up, they're taxed up to the nines. And there are certain brackets where contractors pay more tax anyway. So you don't pay the employer's national insurance. You pay your personal stuff, but you don't pay it as an employer. But if you're paying yourself dividends, which everybody does, $5,000 you pay normally, and it's just your normal personal tax at whatever rate you're at. But after that, there's an additional, I think it's 5% dividend tax. So every dividend you pay, you tax another 5% on top of the corporation tax and the personal
Osborne
tax.
Brought that in, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. I think he did. So we pay more tax anyway. One of the reasons we pay more tax is because we're paid a little bit more anyway, just purely because of the risk. So I could be out of work at any point in time. So you tend to get a little bit more money, so you're paying more tax anyway. And the projections were that because lots of companies have just either decided to just shut down the number of contractors they have and just not employ them, and lots of contractors as well are obviously trying to go. So I've just gone permanent for the first time in donkey's years since 2002. Lots of people are going permanent. Lots of contractors are saying, I've got enough money, I'm going to hang around and see where the market is in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
So they were projecting that they would lose £2.1 billion in tax in the first 6 months alone.
This is the Treasury were projecting.
No, this is external reviews.
Okay.
So it's crazy.
But that's now been canned for a year.
That's been canned because it gets in the way of business, and but hang on. If it's a bad thing for business now, is it not going to be a bad thing for business in a year's time? It's
and so this I've been
sorry for my rant on that.
No, that's fine. And I have been my general concern about all of this was we were just proving that's maybe a bit too general, but we were showing that less government could be a good thing with leaving the European Union, and less regulations could be a good thing, and etc., etc., etc. And obviously, I held out absolutely no hope on this Boris Johnson government for not increasing those things at home. But it was a way of showing that the establishment structures could be broken down in a way. And now we're seeing the largest state expansion that we will see in our lifetime, and these things are very difficult to roll back. And that history shows us the temporary income tax, for example, become a permanent fixture.
Well, who was it? It sounds like it should have been Reagan or somebody. He said, I think one of the presidents said, "There is nothing so permanent as a temporary government scheme."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's so true.
Sounds about right. But I wonder how the politics of this is going to play out. Now, I think at the moment, I don't remember you squirreling them away down there.
I've done it again.
Right, for our listener, some glasses are appearing, and what have you brought today?
This is a new expression of singleton that I found. I can't remember what it's called.
The singleton of Dufftown.
It is, yeah. So.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
Carry on, I didn't wish to disturb your train of thought there.
Well, you did. What was I talking about?
I don't know. We were talking about, I think it was something about Covid-19.
Well, obviously it was that.
And it was nothing so permanent as a temporary government scheme.
Yes. So...
Your health?
Cheers. Lots of state interventions now. Lots of talk of money being thrown at people. And obviously it's to help people with their rent. It's to help people stay employed. It's loans. It's stuff like that. And it's the emergency powers that are getting passed, in order to do certain things. But there are these, for want of a better term, libertarian policies, the removal of a tax for a period of time, the deferring of IR35, things like that they are saying specifically is to remove burdens. Do you think it'll be difficult for them to add them back? Or this is all politics, all of it. But what are their reasons going to be for saying it's okay now? Business can handle all these burdens now. How do you say that? How do you articulate that? How was Boris? Boris is a good communicator. How does he say, "Don't worry, everyone, I'm going to tax all the businesses again"?
Because we need to. He's going to do his thing with his two hands again. And he's like, business in one hand, we've done our best and we've supported you during this difficult time, but now we need to pay for the amazing public sector that he does his like fist pumping with his other hand.
Yeah.
And he'll talk about it. It's like we need to pay for this stuff for our first class, world class, second to none public services that were there for you during this difficult period.
You're right.
And think,
they're going to hold this over us now for decades, aren't they?
Of course they are. And they think about, they dropped VAT, didn't they, to 15%. And they had no qualms about not just reinstating it to 17.5%, but then whacking it up to 20% again afterwards. They won't worry about that. They will be seen to, we now need the large corporations to pay their fair share, because they were supported by us during this difficult time. They were supported by you, ordinary taxpayers. It's now time for them to pay us back.
It's so false, isn't it? It's so false.
You can see it already.
I'm squirming, but I think you're absolutely bang on. And I think actually, if ever there was an excuse for, I'm projecting for him now, but Boris's mythical 50-50. I think that's what he's been aiming for anyway. But now, you can just see to have someone like him come out there and say, this just shows that it needs to be 50-50. I'm not asking for 60-40. I'm not saying it should be more in government. These both need to work in harmony, in all the same ways that you're saying there.
Perfect equilibrium.
The perfect balance. The ultimate centrist. And that scares me. So the question I had for you that I've been thinking about all week is this right now the best example, the only example we're going to see in our lifetime, really, truly, of the planned economy, We've got guys at the top right now, literally pulling the strings and the levers.
It's as close as we're going to get. And this brings me on to. So you were talking earlier about about the meme that no one's a libertarian. Aside from the guy in China who was the whistleblower who went against the government. And
can I just say for a moment how much I am absolutely hating all the stuff on social media that is all about how amazing the Chinese are. And I don't mean that. I'm talking about the Chinese government here, not the Chinese people. But they somehow it's all fine. Well, they dragged people back to their homes at gunpoint, and we don't know how many people are in mass graves and all this kind of stuff. The Chinese did this perfectly.
Well, yeah, people keep talking about how good it is in China. And so, I mean, my question to every single one of these tweets that I see is: Would you rather be in China right now than the UK?
Yeah.
Haven't had many responses.
Anyway, I interrupted you.
Yeah. So there's the meme about there's no such thing as a libertarian.
In a crisis or
in whatever. And you specifically mentioned the word statist. I think this isn't. So let's just narrow this down a little bit.
Okay. I'm deliberately not being left or right here.
If we want to be accurate about this, and we like our definitions, it's not that and I think there's some truth in that people are becoming more authoritarian and more statist in general. I mean, there are still libertarians like us around, not very many, but there weren't very many anyway.
Yeah.
I think people in general are getting a bit more statist and thinking, oh well, the government should act, the government needs to do this, etc., etc. But everything that the government's doing in this, or most things in this planned economy, think about what they're doing. They're talking about like kind of restricting where people go out, telling who
freedom of movement. Don't you just love that term now? Don't you think that term really truly means something now? Freedom of movement.
But all these things they're talking about, locking stuff down, cancelling schools, and telling business what they can do. And it's all on the right. So it's not just that everyone's becoming.
So they're not nationalising things.
No, it's everyone's becoming a right winger. Even the left wingers they're embracing their right wing during this period. Our government needs to tell us what to do, and where we're allowed, which business is allowed to do what, who can go to school. It's just.
I mean, I suppose. I mean, you could argue that you're getting. I mean, we're nearly police state territory with this,
which is probably that's the left
both.
And the right.
That's why I say it, and we've argued before or discussed before at least that there are absolutely elements of leftist communist regimes that, if by our strict definitions, are right wing.
I mean, so you get to the stage where the only differences are the quality of the uniforms, I think, between the left wing and the right wing secret police and the police state. That's probably the only difference.
I think that's fair.
But do you see what I'm saying though? It tends to be more stuff that's getting pushed to the right.
I think that's right. It is authoritarianism, but it is around telling you what to do. It's regulation. It's or the removing of it temporarily. I mean, that's the weird thing. The weird thing about it. So Corbyn's going to have to self-isolate for 3 months from the weekend.
He's got to be.
He's 70.
He's got to be in his 70s. Isn't he?
Well, 71 now.
Right.
That's funny.
But okay, so how many politicians?
He can't not do it, can he?
No.
He can't turn around and say, "Well, I don't think," because otherwise nobody else do it. He can't. He is stuck.
So how many politicians are in their 70s? There must be quite a few. What about the Lords? The House of Lords? They're ancient.
So did you see any shots of PMQs today? So this is
no.
On a Wednesday. So PMQs basically only the people that asked a question. They're all spaced out. It was unlike any PMQs you've ever seen. I didn't watch it. I've just seen the photographs, and I know that's how they set it up. With this close to them not, the Commons not meeting. I mean, the Lord certainly is a tinderbox for this. But I think I'm right in saying that. And so here's another history in the making thing. The budget got waved through without division.
Really?
There was no vote on the budget.
I guess that's because they. So
even to spend so much money.
Well, yeah, and even the left wingers. If you don't pass the budget through, you can't take income tax, can you? So you can delay it for a bit, but we've only got a couple of months before we can. If you don't get that through, I mean, they'd have found a way. But under the current law,
but opposition's opposed.
They do, but oppositions don't want the government to stop taking income tax.
So why? Yeah, that's not a good enough argument, is it? Because the opposition always votes down the budget.
I think they.
Why didn't they oppose it? They're in the minority. Why didn't they oppose it?
I think they were scared of not enough Tories being either fit and well or there or whatever, and they just want to get this through so that government continues. Government continuing and the establishment continuing trumps everything.
Politics.
It trumps everything.
But this
as long as the system continues and we get another shot in 4 or 5 years' time, this budget doesn't matter. Just get it through. Make sure that the whole government, the whole system doesn't collapse.
But this is why this is different.
Over later.
This is why this is different, though. You look back at 2008, and I remember vividly. The Tories were already doing quite well in the polls. You got Cameron and Osborne in their kind of ascendancy.
They were doing very well until the crash, in which case they took a bit of a dip, didn't they? That was the thing that kind of brought Gordon Brown back up. Because you remember he was he was like moping around like a man who looked like he knew he was defeated.
Yeah.
Suddenly there's the credit crunch and the world crisis, and he's happy days again.
But Cameron took the political decision to back the bank bailouts.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm comparing it to now. Yeah, I'm comparing it to now as we'll let you wave this through. Because politically, I didn't want to be seen on the wrong side, and I think
they are establishment figures more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think I think it's exactly the same now, for basically the same reasons. But it's easier because, in fact, this is easier for all of them, isn't it? Because this is the equivalent of an inanimate object. There are no people involved. You can't blame the greedy bankers. You can't blame the greedy corporations. You can't blame greedy individuals. This is so cut and dry. Why would we need to vote on it? This is spending because something nobody can control.
I mean, normally what would happen
is threatening it.
So normally what would happen is the opposition would oppose and say, regardless of how much it was,
yep,
you're not spending enough.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's the point. That's the point.
That would be.
But they didn't even do that. But they didn't even do that. They haven't even come out and said, we think this is only half measures, we think it should be more. Just waved it through.
Yeah. It's because I think they're probably a little bit scared of the establishment kind of losing its grip on stuff. So that's just like, we need to keep this going. This system that we've got where we have control for a few years and then you have control for another few years and then we get it back again.
How important is democracy at the moment? Now, I know,
for you and I, or
no, I'm asking that in general terms. Because
there's no such thing as a Democrat in a pandemic. Is that where you're going with this?
I'm kind of saying that mainly because Sadiq Khan's in for another year now without a vote. All the local councillors that were supposed to be voting very soon as well. I'm assuming it's coming up April, May time.
Yeah,
the local election has been just been deferred for a year. But that's just so. What, these rules don't matter anymore?
No, they don't. It's the establishment above everything else.
Yeah, and this is why I hate it when people just invoke democracy, and they invoke democracy when they're talking about free speech and stuff. It's like, what the hell has that got to do with anything?
So no, I haven't been on Twitter and listening to the media as much recently, but with all these elections getting cancelled or postponed or whatever, I haven't heard Brendan O'Neill bang on about it. And normally he's the first person. He may have done.
I've seen of his stuff is in support of the government response and saying that people criticising it are daft, basically. But you're right. This is one of his. It's one of his things.
Normally he would jump all over this.
Yeah, we should have a look. But yeah, I haven't been reading any of his stuff recently. But it does show that it's just a veneer. It's just for show. The democracy bit's just for show.
Of course it is.
Because what we can do is we can just tear up the rules when we want to.
And we've
got a good reason. It's a virus. Why would we want what get in the way of democracy?
We've explained before why democracy isn't real democracy anyway. I mean, so no form of democracy can really work. I mean, if you think about the most pure form of democracy that there is,
It's called the free market,
where you've got like an actual democracy.
Okay.
Where you've got like a village, and they go to their village hall, and they all have vote on different things. Okay, so how long do you spend speaking on different subjects? There still needs to be a group of people who make the decisions on the rules of this democracy.
Yes.
So it just falls down under minimal scrutiny. It can't possibly work. There's no such thing.
Yeah. There's no universality to it.
No, of course not.
At all. Okay, where do we go from here? Is it going to get... I don't want to make predictions about how long it's going to last and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I've been reading I've been trying to stay as informed as I possibly can.
I mean, to give you a bit of hope,
I could list a load of stuff.
Jacob Rees-Mogg is saying that everything, all the measures that they bring in, he wants them all to have sunset clauses.
Yeah,
and he's pushing for that. So I mean, whether that will happen or not,
if he's saying that publicly,
yes,
then and he is a minister, so and he's always very careful about what he does say now that he's a member of the government. So that's fair enough.
And it's not just him. He said that it's been talked about. That anything that comes in should have a sunset clause.
Yeah.
Any of these emergency measures.
I mean, I've thought for a while. I mean, one thing we haven't mentioned here is certainly my feeling. I think it's the same as you. Not scared by the virus at all. Not scared by the virus at all. I'm scared about all of the things that people do as a result of it. It does seem like a lot of madness for me at the moment. People are acting crazy, and I suppose that's an angle we could take to talk about, is the people fighting over loo roll in the shops.
Do you know why that started out?
I've been trying to find it. What started it?
So people will... I can't remember who exactly.
Something went viral.
Well, yeah. So basically, there was this. I don't even know if this is true. It could be completely true, but there was this rumor going around that the majority of toilet paper comes from China.
For goodness' sake.
And if the supply chains break down, we won't have any. So people just went out and thought, we need to get that.
I mean, it's utter nonsense.
I mean, I've got a bidet. Never used it yet, but if it comes down to it, we can't get any. I'm all right, Jack. I remember, when I bought the house, thinking, who the hell installs a bidet?
So you did it right. So you didn't install.
Oh, no, I didn't install it. No.
Yeah.
I bought the house and it was already in.
This must be in your ensuite. I haven't seen this in your.
Yeah, it's in
right.
It's on the ensuite.
Okay.
The shower and the toilet and the bidet. Okay, so I have used it. I've used it for bathing.
I don't need to know.
My tortoise when she needs a bath.
What?
Perfect size. To stick her in there. It's like a little mini tortoise bath. But that's the only thing it's ever been used for.
But
so I'm fine.
Moving back to talking about human behaviour, what do you feel about the arguments that I think are being made about psychology and human behaviour, and everyone just being greedy, and this is why you need the state, because individuals are greedy and they'll push over the granny to get the toilet roll and all this kind of stuff. And the problem is that is literally happening. I have examples of things that people have told me from this morning in shops where people are being close to violent with each other in order to just go about their shopping.
So Julie was she was chatting to a friend of hers who's a wheelchair user as well, and I think he went to Tesco's, and people were like kind of pushing and shoving, and it was crazy. Whereas Julie, this is going to make us sound middle class, but Julie went to Waitrose this afternoon. Fine. I mean, the stock, there wasn't an amazing amount of stock in the shelves.
Yeah.
But everyone was calm, everyone was relaxed. There was,
So
costs a bit more, but
the loo roll shortage thing had already started. But last Monday, a week and a half ago, when it was all, what are people doing? Oh, this is just ridiculous. But literally the only shortage was toilet paper. And nobody was talking about any of the stuff they're talking about now. It was still not happening here, really. And I got, it was Monday morning and I was working from home, and I got up and just kind of went, I'm gonna go and do some shopping.
Some panic buying.
No, this was pre-panic buying. And this was going to buy this, but this was proper. I'm going to go and buy tinned food. Yeah, I'm going to stock up the shelves for the moment they say, right, shut the doors, and we're going to have loads of stuff. I didn't buy any toilet paper. I just went out and bought, tins of potatoes and carrots and stuff like that. But I went to Waitrose. I deliberately went to Waitrose. Caroline thought I was going mad, and she's like, "You are crazy." And I was like, "No, I'm going to go and buy this stuff. It's going to make me feel better." But this is because I think that the herd is going to start doing this, and I want to get in there first. And I think that the toilet paper thing is an early indicator. It's a red flag to all of this. And then this last Monday, so exactly 1 week later, and she's out there going to the shops. She's like, it's like it clicked in her brain a week later, and she went, "I totally get it now. I need to go out and buy some food."
And what exactly did she panic buy, Nick, that you mentioned to me earlier?
Oh, there's a bottle of Baileys in there.
So you're not allowed to buy tins of baked beans, but bottles of Baileys are fine.
So I came back.
We can edit this out if you're going to get in trouble for this.
No, it's fine. I came back in the house, and she told me, there's a place up there above the toaster area up there. There's a big bag full of crisps and chocolate, and it's like this is the if break glass bit. This is the to make ourselves feel better if we're locked down proper curfew style. Then this is the bit we have. And I was like, that's fine, because I think we're stocked up on pretty much everything else anyway. And then I opened the fridge, and there's a bottle of Baileys, and I was like, good work. You bought a bottle of Baileys. She bought the bigger. It was just a regular sized bottle. The larger bottle, which was on offer, completely sold out. So people have been panic buying Baileys.
Have you been panic buying Scotch yet?
No. Although, again,
thinking about it,
from this morning, I've got plenty. As a result of Christmas and birthday, I've now got plenty. Although again, a friend of mine went to Tesco this morning at 6 a.m. Only because he's getting up at ridiculously early to go to the gym at the moment. It's there at 6 a.m. Hundreds of people queuing, and he's like, whatever. Goes to get. He just does a normal weekly shop. Didn't go there to panic buy. Just went there because he was there. An older gentleman, country gent, comes out with his trolley. One of the smaller, shallower trolleys, basically a basket on wheels. Only 3 items in his trolley. A bottle of whiskey, a second bottle of whiskey, and a third bottle of whiskey. Get your priorities right.
Yeah, the essentials. That's good to hear.
So there are good news stories at the moment in terms of this pandemic. China have closed all their temporary hospitals that they created now.
Temporary concentration hospitals.
I'm not going to pass any judgment. The hospitals that we said, we can't build any hospitals, and they built one in 48 hours. I think that's going to be of a certain quality, and I think there's going to be some slave labour involved there as well. Without passing judgment on that, the fact is they don't need those hospitals anymore. Apple have reopened all of their stores in China.
Have they? I didn't realise that.
Yes. Who do you trust more, Apple or the Chinese government? You don't have to answer that question. The Indians have come up with a cocktail of different meds that seem to be working to treat it. So this isn't developing some new drug. This is going, let's see what we can throw at this, and people are getting better quicker. That's good news.
That's good news. I mean, even South Korea are noticing a drop off, and they had a huge spike. I mean, I think the reasons for that is that they've done far better testing. So they've made testing available, and they were testing something like 20,000 people a day. And if you compare that, I'm not sure what the figures are now, but a few days ago there were only 5,000 people in America treated in total, and South Korea were doing 20,000 a day.
I think you've got to note that the cultural differences across the globe are affecting this. I don't think it's unfair to say that the Japanese have a completely different approach to personal hygiene and to keeping distance They're not shaking hands all the time.
Italians.
Than the Italians, who are, and it's kissing and hugging and all of that. But also, I think it's important to note that Italy has got the oldest population in Europe. And so the combination of those things, and again, I think there just happen to be more either Italian tourism from China or vice versa. Something happened that really kicked this off in Italy because of the tourism industry. You combine that with them being much more touchy-feely and generally older. That's why they've got this big spike of deaths. But it is. They're getting over it. Italy hasn't reached the top of the peak yet, but China has. It's already on the other side. As of recording, we're about 8,000 deaths globally. But I did a whole presentation to our staff. I tell you what, here's an observation. Never before the company's been going for 12 years, but we've only had staff for kind of the last 9. I've never felt the need for leadership more than this moment.
Well, you needed some, or
no? That I feel compelled to give leadership to the staff.
So were they worried?
Totally.
Worried about getting it, or worried about food shortages, or
everything?
Really,
everything. We've got a whole spectrum, and it's very interesting to see how different people cope. People's coping mechanisms are very, very different. Some people just become more obnoxious, but that's the only thing they can do. It's fascinating to see. But I gave a presentation Tuesday, Monday this week, where I actually made it into a bit of a game. Threw up things like smoking, seasonal flu, car accidents, and got people to guess how many deaths globally there had been so far for each of these things.
Well, flu is like quarter of a million, isn't it, a year?
Yep.
And we've got vaccines for that.
Yep. Smoking. How many people do you think have died so far from smoking this year globally?
No idea.
It's over 1 million people.
Really?
Yep. And suicides. It's at 200,000.
Did you manage to find the figures of people falling off roofs, putting up solar panels?
I looked for it. I couldn't find it. I looked for it because I wanted that to be the kind of coup de grace of the entire presentation. But anyway, you put all that stuff in, and then you say, well, this is how many. I think it was like 5,500 deaths at the time. This is how many people have died so far of coronavirus, and it was only like 55 in the UK at this time. Don't get this out of proportion. But this is my concern about the government response. And government response, then they have to do something. As you say, they are there because they love power. So of course they're going to wield it. And if all the other countries are wielding it, then they're going to have they don't want to be seen to be doing nothing. They can't be seen to be doing nothing. But to me, it's completely out of all proportion. I've read an article, I can put a link in the description, from the Hoover Institute, of a guy who wrote on the 16th, so a couple of days ago. He's not a virologist, but he's got as many letters after names, whatever. He's an economist, a lawyer. But the point is, he gets statistical models, and he's looking at the data, and he's saying, actually, I think the deaths are going to top out at about 50,000 globally, and it's worth reading the whole thing, because he's talking about the ways that this work and the problems with all the models that other people are using. And you read it and you go, well, that makes sense. The fact that it does target the old. It's the old and the infirm that are copying it from this.
And it's specifically it's the elderly who have underlying health conditions as well. You can be old and get it.
The best
it's
thing,
not that bad.
Absolutely. And actually, our advice to staff as well has been, the best thing you can do is stay healthy. It's the best thing you can do is go to bed early, do some exercise while you can, eat better, don't get bladdered. You need to keep your immune system healthy. That's the best thing you could do. But the death rates for the under 60s are tiny, absolutely tiny. But I had to give this presentation to staff because they're not getting the information well. And you watch a Boris press conference, it's really clear. You listen even to Ambassador Sunak talking about stuff, and he's a really good communicator. I don't think the government message is bad. I don't think when you read a media outlet, they're particularly twisting it. Their interpretations of whether they've gone far enough and all that kind of stuff are mainly nonsense. But when they're listing whether or not you should stay at home or not, it's pretty clear. I've had instances of people going, well, that's not for me though, is it? Well, I don't have to do that, do I? Yes. I mean, look, do what you like. This is guidance. I'm all I'm doing, and all I've been doing as a business leader, is conveying the messages, trying to convey them as clearly as possible. I'm not saying you should do this, but at the same time, I've got to look after the entire workforce here. And so, if you're not going to self-isolate and you have these symptoms, then I'm going to have some very scared people working in the same room as you, and I can't really have that. So you need to make a decision about what you're going to do, but you need to think about the consequences to your co-workers. And this isn't that we actually think we can all get it and none of us are going to really suffer, but this is the mental suffering that happens from this because people are scared. And a lot of it is because the government is doing a lot of stuff as a result. But every government in the world is, so they've got an excuse.
On that cheery note.
Sorry, we ended up some positives, but then I ended up sneaking some negatives in as well.
You're negative smuggling.
Sorry.
It's okay. So I think we'll probably have to end it here. It's not over. It's not over, but I don't think it's as bad as regular flu.
No.
It would surprise me if, and I'm obviously not an expert, but it would surprise me if we had more deaths of coronavirus than we had of seasonal flu. We had more than 250,000. That would surprise me.
Yeah, and we're going to have probably more, almost certainly more people are going to die on the roads this year than die from Covid-19. But we're not stopping the roads.
Is there any way you could put a positive spin on that?
No, people die. Death is bad. There you go. That's positive, isn't it?
Thank you for watching and listening to Sounding Board. We're on YouTube and every good podcast app. See you again next time.